All right, hi everyone. So now we're going to begin the webinar. Alrighty, so before we begin, just some housekeeping things. For audio purposes, please mute your audio. If you have any questions, use the question module and we'll get back to you. There will be a Q&A at the end of the session. And if you're having any technical difficulties, please use the chat module and we'll help you out there. And after the webinar today, feel free to look us up on Facebook and LinkedIn. We'd love to connect. About our hosts, so today we have two great hosts for you. Bob Graham is our CEO and co-founder of Event Temple, and Rupesh Patel, he's a president and COO of Zenique Hotels. In his current role as president and chief operating officer at Zenique Hotels, Rupesh oversees the portfolios and operations as well as the company's acquisitions and developments. Being born and raised into hospitality, his angle of conducting business by building relationships is a direct reflection of his father, Raman Patel. Over the last decade, Rupesh has overseen the growth of Zenique Hotels into a multi-property portfolio, as well as Zenique being rated one of the top destination hotels on TripAdvisor. And without further ado, Rupesh, take it away.
Thank you, Amy. A little bit about Zenique Hotels. We're a family-owned and operated company. We started in 1993 with our first development and went on to develop 4 more within the next 14 years. In 2008, we sold 2 of our properties and remained status quo. As everybody knows, that was a really bad time in our industry. And in 2011 is when Zenique was actually born, when we acquired an additional property in San Jose. We have many properties that are ranked #1 on TripAdvisor, and we just recently completed the development of our Aloft in Dublin and are working on a Hyatt Place in Paso Robles. As a company, our motto is all about service. It's not just about mediocre service, it's about exceptional above and beyond service. At the end of the day, we're in the hospitality industry and we should be hospitable to the highest level. And we, as well as many other companies, understand that if your customer service is there, success in your hotels are inevitable. So before we joined Event Temple or even electronic CRM, as most hotels did in the past, sales was all done on paper. It was note taking, it was post-its, even maybe emails, but it was very disorganized. And once we got into the CRM world, specifically Event Temple, everything becomes much more organized for not only your staff, but also for above property general managers and others that are not in the sales process day to day. And it allows us to be able to get a global vision on how our sales efforts are being conducted and how efficiently they're being conducted. So a CRM is definitely a must-have in today's sales environment. So strategies for effective management of sales and revenue growth. We can go on to the next slide. So it's important for data collection. Let's talk about prospecting. Prospecting takes, diligence, persistence, and organization. It's our duty as the seller to follow up with leads and prospects. Many times in the past where people had things written down, it's very easy for those things to get lost, and then the follow-up fails to happen. If we wait for buyers to try to contact us, we'll never win. With our follow-ups, they'll see the value we have for them, and it shows that we'll take care of them and that we're communicating with them efficiently. And a system like Event Temple easily organizes prospecting process and keeps sales managers on top of all business leads. It allows us to hold on to all the data that is there in one bucket, instead of having post-its in multiple locations within an office or even a hotel, and sometimes even our sales managers' cars. So having something that curates all this data, holds it for you, allows you to be on top of your game and kind of creates a roadmap, which we'll talk about later, for what your sales manager should be doing. Data in business is king, and having account history with a property, it prevents repeating of information or asking the same questions to a client when you are following up with them. The last thing we want for a client is to think that we don't know what's going on, or we don't remember something that was discussed. This will give them the impression that we don't value them or that they're just another client. So data allows sales managers to better focus or better forecast and understand what business segments they need more efforts in. And this aspect of the software is critical for both sales managers, revenue managers, and others to understand what business is the best business for any given period, date, or season. Since the system allows us to curate data and provide the historical information, um, as I mentioned, it allows them to see who to target for specific periods and dates. But it also allows them to better maintain relationships with the data that we have for their clients. Again, showing them that we care and appreciate their business. And it also allows our sales teams to better target clients for promotions or specials. Take, for example, you have meeting space within your hotel, and you have specific meetings that come during the summer. Well, if you're not getting the pickup that you normally see, you can go into the CRM and see which groups or clients book during the summer, and maybe blast out an email to each of them talking about a special promotion to try to entice them to book back with you during that need period. And then the importance of the sales pipeline really helps with revenue management and the relationship between revenue management and sales, which is what we'll talk about next. With us, each time we get an inquiry, it is entered into Event Temple. No matter what, whether it's closed or it's very cold or it's hot, no matter what, every single inquiry goes into Event Temple. This allows us to have historical data on our closure rate, as well as our opportunities for the future. It also tells us why a client chose to select a different hotel, which we can use to enhance ourselves for the next opportunity. Once a client agrees to a deal, we allow everything to flow through Event Temple. It allows our team to stay on top of those that have been sent to contract, signed, not signed, etc., so we can effectively follow up and not allow anything to fall through the cracks. Our revenue manager also monitors these leads and ensures that we're following up when the system shows something has become stale or something that requires a follow-up from us, from the property manager. The relationship between sales and revenue management is key in a successful strategy. The sales manager's job is to bring in business. The revenue manager's job is to ensure we capture that business at the correct rate. It also allows us to ensure we don't overcommit ourselves in any segment, so that we're not, so that we're able to maximize our revenues, maximize our ADRs, and distribute the business that we come in by capturing rates in different segments. This also allows us to capture business and kind of get an edge on our competitors. I've talked about it a couple times, but consistently following up with your clients really gives them the feeling of value. It shows them that we care about them and we want to earn their business. Most competitors will wait for the client to respond instead of following up with them. And as I mentioned before, if we wait for the buyer to contact us, we're pretty much never going to win. Next slide. So sales is a interesting position, an interesting department within hotels. Think about any kind of product or service that you're offering. It has to have good reviews from the users that have already used it, or have already, in this instance, that have already stayed with us. So having high rankings on websites such as TripAdvisor or Yelp, or even all the OTAs of Expedia, Orbitz, and brand.com, travelers, clients, groups, meeting planners, they're all looking on these sites. And so for them to see a high customer satisfaction rating on these sites gives you and the sales manager a better chance of closing the deal. And so for us, we make it a priority for our company and all of our hotels that we strive to be in the top 10% of TripAdvisor. If obviously our goal is to be number one, but being in the top 5 to 10% makes a very big difference in your efforts of closing sales deals, and it allows your sales managers to reference the satisfaction rating that we have. So we can't just rely on our sales managers to close every deal possible. We also have to do our parts as owners and general managers that once they close a deal, that the hotel and the service, the upkeep is able to keep them and retain them for residual income for many years to come, especially for those that are annual type groups or meetings. We have one property, our Holiday Inn Express in Modesto. It's been number one on TripAdvisor for 12 years, and we consistently are crushing the competition in retail rate production, group business, and more. Every time there's an event or youth sports group or team tournament that's in town, we get so many calls, and majority of them say, we want to stay with you because you're number one on TripAdvisor. So there's definitely a direct correlation between your customer satisfaction ratings online and your closure rate on sales, but it also allows you to close at a higher rate. People are willing to pay a little bit more when they're certain that their experience and the value that they're going to get for the price they paid, they're going to get it. And so I really urge everyone to really focus on achieving your online presence of customer satisfaction, and that happens from the actual operations that you have on site. Next slide. Corporate rate agreements. So we continuously monitor production. We review them with our clients on a monthly basis, especially our top 10, and we stay in front of them. We have to show them that we value them as a client and that we're here for them at all times. This begins with the pitch to the close, to the maintenance of the account, and Event Temple allows us to stay on top of them on all communication with clients and track their production. It also allows us, if let's say you have turnover in your sales department or they're on vacation, it allows somebody to go into that account profile and see exactly where the communication has been, what has been communicated to the client, so that there's no repeat or wasting time of the client on trying to reinvent the wheel of things that were already discussed. When it comes to RFP season or rate negotiation season, we're able to see what clients produced and if they made a positive impact on our revenue or if they displaced revenue. Depending on the outcome of the analysis of the data that we have in Event Temple, we'll be able to decide on how we will negotiate and how we will explain the increase to the client based on hard data. The account tracking tool that Event Temple has is going to be a game changer in the CRM world, because it'll allow us to see, what day of the week are our accounts actually producing, and is it actually displacing revenue? Because again, being sold out doesn't necessarily mean that you've won. If you're sold out at the highest rate possible in your market, that's called a win. And so being able to analyze data in more detail will allow you to achieve that goal of capturing the highest rate, and also maneuvering year to year, because things do change, market demands change, and sometimes you do need to increase a client's rate, or instead of a flat rate, you may have to shift them to a dynamic percentage discount just because of the way market trends are working. So trying to do that manually is very, very difficult, and having a software like Event Temple makes it easier for your sales managers, your general managers, your revenue managers, and even your property owners or executives to be able to really look in detail and see, are we looking at this, or are we taking the right approach with each of our clients? And when we do talk to our clients, it's not just hey, for 2020 we have to increase your rate $5 because we didn't see the production we thought we would. Well, at that point, it becomes very subjective. But if you can give them hard numbers, hard data that they can relate to and explain things, then they'll be much more receptive and understanding of why their rate is being increased. Nobody likes to have subjective reasons for why they're going to end up paying more. And that's why we always use hard data, and not only the way we explain it to clients, but we also use hard data on how we create our strategies. We don't like to make anything subjective. because then it's just, an opinion at that point. Hard data is what everyone should be making their decisions around. At this point, I'm going to hand it over to Bob. Bob is a wealth of knowledge in CRM process, and he's also the CEO and co-founder of Event Temple. So Bob, I'll let you take it away from here.
Yeah, thanks, Rupesh. I was just trying to unmute myself there. Appreciate it. So we can jump to the next slide here. So one thing that we've found, and I've been in sales for a long time myself before founding Event Temple over the last 6 years or so, but sales reps can't magically hit quota. If they could, they would. And instead, we found that we really want to be doing the right activities that are going to generate results. And Rupesh, I know we've talked before when I interviewed you for the Ultimate Hotel Sales Guide. We touched on all these things, right? Right people, what outreach looks like, accountability, data. But what I found when I chatted with you is that, the pipeline management process, it seems to remove stress for both the salesperson and management. Because basically the salespeople are now going to have a playbook of how to win, clarity on how performance is measured, and they understand a clear correlation between, okay, if I put in the effort, I'm going to get the results. And then for management, like you said before, it's not subjective anymore. They're managing the activities, not their feelings about their sales team. They're just looking at the inputs they're doing and the results they're leading to. So the emotion is out of it. There's no more guesswork, and we can start to use this data that you mentioned to chart playbooks and do more of what's working and less of what isn't. So Rupesh, I wanted to just touch on this for a second. In your experience, have you, found a clear way to move away from the all-star salesperson, instead, create some playbooks or maybe find some tools and processes that enabled you to get someone who's maybe less experienced or less naturally talented up and running?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, all stars are all stars, and there's not a tremendous amount of them that are out there. And us as management companies or ownership or even general managers, it's really our job to develop our people. And when you develop somebody, you really positively impact their life where they may not have had these certain skills before. And the way that we've done that is once we have Event Temple that has these steps, these traces, these activities that each of our sales managers can log, we're able to create a roadmap on how to go through the process of sales from the lead to the pitch to the close to the maintenance, etc. And we can show them exactly how to do it in Event Temple with job aids on step by step. Now, even with sales managers that have been all stars, sometimes it can be by luck, sometimes it can be by market, but having a clear roadmap will set them up for success. If we just hand them over the keys to our hotel and say, sell as much as you can at the highest rate, that's pretty unclear. It's too general of a guideline. And so with Event Temple, we have steps, we have procedures, and then we're able to track those by reviewing things like the activity report to see, are they putting in the effort? Because like I mentioned before, we're not going to close everything, and that's just the fact of the matter. You're not going to win every piece of business. And sometimes general managers or above property managers will put emotion into it and ask the sales manager, well, why didn't you close it? Why did the hotel next door capture it? Well, if we have those notes in Event Temple that maybe they went to the hotel next door because they had complimentary breakfast and we don't, or maybe it's a newer hotel and we don't have that, or they were number one on TripAdvisor and we were number 5. Those types of things, like you mentioned, will take the emotion out of it. So it's also a security and an accountability, but it also allows for a roadmap on, what step do I need to take right now as a sales manager in this sales process? And once I finish that step, it shows them exactly what the next step is all the way through closure and maintenance.
Gotcha. That makes sense. Let's skip to the next slide here. Yeah, let's stop right here. So we've talked a bit about technology, and you mentioned the importance of CRM a couple times. I just wanted to highlight, you know, today's sales professionals spend only 34% of their time selling. And let's face it, some hotels don't have dedicated salespeople on site. The GM will be doing the sales. And, you know, unsurprisingly, 57% of salespeople won't hit their quota this year. So you touched on it before, Rupesh, but what was life like before using any CRM at all? And, you know, what would you say just the high level benefits to having one are in terms of data tracking or saving time?
I mean, I think it's all of them. For one, the biggest factor I can say is organization of data. You know, our salespeople should be out on the road. They should be in front of our clients, and they should be talking to them. And that kind of forces them to just take notes, and those notes can easily get lost, especially if you're doing 10, 20 calls in a day or in a week. It can easily get, you know, lost in the shuffle. And so having Event Tempo allows them to put in their activity immediately. And also, like you mentioned, not all properties have dedicated sales efforts or a dedicated sales manager. And so they have to utilize other people within their company or within the hotel, such as front desk agents, to input in data. And so it's very easy for, you know, a sales manager to walk out of a meeting with a client, quickly email whoever it is that's assisting them with data entry, and that person can go into Event Temple and type it in so that it's ready for anybody to look into there, and for the sales manager when they get back to the office. Before, you know, again, it could easily get lost or forgotten, especially when you're doing multiple calls in a day.
Gotcha. Let's jump to the next slide here. So, you know, we found in our research that even the most driven, ambitious salespeople, they can have a tough time staying on track. That's why pipeline management is so effective for everyone, because it's going to refocus energy on what actually drives results, you know, creates that predictable playbook. And sales, especially prospecting, really is a numbers game. So for everyone, we want to hit those numbers as quickly and as efficiently as possible. And we talked a bit too about the all-star salesperson, how sometimes you can't find that person, and it might always, you know, not always be the best choice either. So I wanted to ask Rupesh, you know, when you're looking at and interviewing potential salespeople, what are some high-level things you look for, and you know, what tips could you give on just maybe little qualities and characteristics that they might have when you're hiring?
Sure. So, you know, now that we have a roadmap, we have a playbook for what the sales manager or sales team needs to do, we really try to focus on culture. For one, the personality. You know, our sales managers need to be personable, and they need to be a likable person, for one. We don't want timid people, but you also don't want somebody that's over the top sales. So what we really look for is somebody that fits our company culture and somebody that understands sales but may not have the full experience of how sales works, um, and the ability to learn and retain information from us within the company. You know, using something like Event Temple really maps out exactly how they can do their job. Now, when it comes to talking to the client and pitching, that's where their personality comes into play, and being a likable person, um, ends up building the relationship with the client or potential client. And at the end of the day, people like to do business with people they like, and people like to do business with their friends. And if your sales team is effectively maintaining clients and being in front of them, and just touching base with them, they're more likely to stay with you. So we really look for the personality of the person, if they have the ability to retain knowledge and learn, and they fit our culture. That's really what we look for, not necessarily somebody that has 10, 15 years of hotel sales experience. It's really about the person that we look for.
That makes sense. And then I was also going to ask, you know, cold calling and prospecting, let's face it, for someone new, it can be a little bit scary, and call reluctance is a real thing. People can put it off and focus on easier tasks. So when you develop your prospecting and your outreach plan and strategy, like, how do you design that, and what sorts of activities do you have them do, and how do you make that process maybe a little bit easier for them so that they're, I've talked to some hoteliers that are like, yeah, just go make cold calls. I assume that's not the best approach. Can you contrast that with how you do it at Zenique?
Yeah, so cold calling is still there, whether it's in person or over the phone or whether it's or email. But nowadays, nothing has to really be cold because we have so much data at our fingertips, guests that are actually staying with us in our hotel or Hotelligence reports. And just knowing what the market data is like. Now, when you actually reach out to somebody that you know is either staying at your hotel or is staying in the market, you can actually reach out to the client via phone, email, or in person, and have data that you can talk to them about. Immediately, right there, your now cold call is a warm call because you're coming with data that you can talk to the person about. Nobody likes somebody that comes in and just says, "Hi, I'm from Hotel A, and we want to earn your business." You know, every single hotel does that. But if you come in there and say, "Hi, I'm from Hotel A, and we've had, a few guests, specifically, Bob, Rupesh, Amy, and Joe from your company have stayed with us in the past couple months, and we want to see if there's the opportunity for us to earn more of your business or if there is more business in the area." And right there now, you've made it a warm lead because you've name dropped somebody that has stayed at your hotel from that company, and so that you're not just anybody that's coming into the door. And so those types of things really help in prospecting. Um, but the pipeline management of it is what's so important because prospecting, you can have 10, 15, 20 prospect at any given time, or, even more than that. But trying to have a sales manager remember all that or organize all that is nearly impossible, and there's always going to be something that falls through the cracks. But Event Temple, having the pipeline dashboard, allows you to see when you contacted somebody and when you should be following up, and not trying to remember it all in your head because we're all human and things can get overloaded in our brains, which make our productivity much less.
That definitely makes sense. Let's jump to the next slide here. So just touching base on always be hustling and the importance of outreach. We talked a little bit about how that process looks and how you motivate the team. I was wondering, could you just mention a few of the data market intelligence tools that you use? You said intelligence. I don't know if you're using OTA Insights or Star Reports, but could you just mention some of the tools that you use and just a quick summary of like how you use them so people that don't know them and haven't used them have a bit of an idea?
Sure. So we actually use a multitude of reports. We use Hotelligence 360, we use Demand 360, we use our star reports, and we also use other internal reports that we create. But the value isn't in any individual report, it's really about combining the data between all of them. So, we'll use Demand 360 to see a forecast of, what market segments are our competitors booking in, and how is our occupancy looking like in the future? Are we picking up on the same pace as them? Are they generating more L&R business than we are from a percentage standpoint of total inventory? And or do they have a group block on the books? Demand 360 even allows you to see, if your comp set has a block and how many has picked up. That gives us the opportunity to be able to see, let's say there's 50 group block rooms in the comp set. Well, that might trigger us to say, hey, there's got to be something happening in our market. What is that, and can we try to go and capture that, and potentially other business that's coming in? So we utilize all those reports and kind of use them hand in hand together, as well as our PMS. I mean, we look at the Hotelligence report, and we may see a specific agency that's booking a tremendous amount of business to our comp set, but not us. And sometimes we'll see that they've stayed with us one or two times. Once you have at least one reservation that has stayed with you from an agency, you can look up that IATA number in your property management system or most property management systems and be able to see, what company that is. Dependent on your front desk agents capturing that company name at check-in, which is also very, very important. But if they do capture that, you're able then to see what company that is that's producing all those room nights from that agency. And then you can then you have to hustle and try to dig for data on trying to find the right contact for that company. But now you have data again. When you do find that contact, you can reach out to them. You reference the data you see in Hotelligence 360, where you can see what production the top hotel in the market is getting, how many room nights, at what rate, at what revenue, how many room nights they have in the future. And now again, you're reaching out to this contact with data, so it becomes more of a warm call than a cold call. So these days you really have to hustle, not only in trying to reach out to the clients, but really digging in for data, so that you're working with true numbers, you're working with true data, and not just going subjective on trying to sell something that the person may not have ever experienced before or knows nothing about.
Right. And I'm just thinking of your example, and I'm kind of picturing a situation where maybe I look at my PMS and I see the guest has been at my property in the past. Then I check Event Temple and I see they actually inquired for a group or corporate rate business with us and didn't book. And then I can go on these other tools and see, oh, they've gone to my competitor, what went wrong, and start to put stories together. And, is this business we want to go back and reach out to? But I think it's an important point that all these different sources, you need to really sit down and analyze the numbers, but then make the story yourself and, add that human element of reading into it a little bit.
Absolutely.
Let's jump to the next slide. So one thing we found at Event Temple that can be helpful is when you are doing outreach, you want to make it personal. Rupesh touched on it earlier, but people want to work with people that they know and like. And I think part of that is caring about them and being empathetic towards their needs and what's going on with them. So making it highly personal, highly relevant, and timely is key. So, if they're renegotiating a corporate rate agreement, they're at a competitive hotel, when that agreement's coming for renewal, you've got that in your CRM, you set a task for 2 weeks, 30 days ahead of that, and you decide when you're going to reach out. So understanding the timeline of everything that needs to happen is really critical. Obviously, if they're in a very busy time, they're an event planner for a tournament, you're not going to reach out during the busy season, and you're not going to send blanket emails or just drop in knowing nothing about them. So definitely personalize it, make it relevant and timely. One thing that Rupesh, I think, is great at, that he's definitely humble about, but I know it to be a fact, is he's really focused on relationships, not selling. And so it's about doing the right thing, treating people how you'd want to be treated. These simple things, but putting the focus back on hospitality. I read a really funny story last night about a guest, and it was on, I think, a blog on LinkedIn. And this guest was staying at a hotel, and the security guard knocked on the door in the middle of the night at 4 a.m. and said, "Hey, I need you to come to the front desk. Your credit card expired." And he's like, "What's going on? It's 4 in the morning." And so that's an example of what bad hospitality looks like, and how to destroy a relationship. So I think it's really important to remember that sometimes in this business too, small things can become big things. So a guest comes and stays at your hotel. Now you reach out, you get to know them, and they're bringing their whole tournament or their whole company here. And then just be conversational and listening. So we have a saying at our company that telling is not selling. You want to think like a doctor, right? So when you go to the doctor, he doesn't just go, "Here's the cure and here's your prescription." He takes the time to go, "Why did you come in today? Let's take a look at what's going on." Ask you some questions to make sure if you agree. And only when he's 100% sure and you're both in agreement about the diagnosis do you prescribe. And I think it's no different with hotels. You want to really listen, get a sense of their specific needs, treat them like the unique person they are, find out their main goals, and then only offer a solution when you've really built that trust and relationship.
Yeah, I mean, one thing that's key is, you said listening is key, and listening is key, but also remembering is key. So let's take a group, for example, that you've secured for this year, and they have a lot of requests on how they want their group, whether it's room locations or billing, or, maybe a special breakfast that's set up. You enter all those notes into that account profile. And when it's time for them to come back again and your sales manager is reaching out to them, you can be in front of it and say, "We're looking forward to having you again if you're coming back to the area. We understand that this is how you would like your billing, your rooming list. These are the special requests that you have, and we'll have all that taken care of for you." So that makes that personable sell where a year later or months later, you already know exactly what they wanted. It's like going to your favorite restaurant. You walk in and the waiter already knows you, already knows what dish you're going to order, and everything is very streamlined for you. You're, more than likely, that's why it's your favorite restaurant. Granted, the food probably tastes good, but also because they know you and they know what your preferences are. And that's the same here with us as hotels, is we have to remember what groups' preferences are. It's similar to how hotel loyalty programs work, where they put in a lot of their preferences. Well, when it comes to groups or meetings and things like that, um, CRM is where you're going to be hosting all that data.
Yeah, definitely. I think that's the essence of hospitality, right? Being remembered, having people care about you enough to keep your likes and preferences in mind. Well, let's jump to the next slide. So we talked about a process and clear systems of executing these processes so that, again, the sales team is focusing on the activities, not the results, because they know that if they do the right activities at the right time consistently, the results are going to come. And so this is really around accountability. I wanted to ask, can you speak a little bit about why accountability is so important in this entire process, and how do you keep the team accountable and on plan at Zenique? You know, what are some key metrics you track, or meetings that you have, or just anything you do to keep the team aligned and focused?
Really, they're fully held accountable on the activities that they do in Event Temple, because anybody can say they did something, or they didn't get a piece of business because of something, but everything needs to be put into Event Temple. So two things that we've done is, or two things that have occurred from our accountability in Event Temple is, one, it kind of forces their adoption into the CRM, so they are going to be inputting in everything that they do. And how we kind of explain to our sales managers is, don't think about what is good info to put in and what's not good info. Just put everything in there, because it may not be valuable to them, but it may be valuable to somebody else on our team, such as a general manager or a catering manager or the revenue manager. So we have them put every data in there. So two things that allows it to do is self accountability for sales managers to see, am I doing everything step by step the way I should? You know, what is my closure rate? How long did it take me to follow up with somebody? And then on the other side of the table, it allows general managers, above property managers, owners to be able to look into things like the activity report to see, are they actually putting in the effort to closing business? And if for those businesses, for those business that we don't close, what was the reason for us not closing? So everything is there and nothing becomes emotional on holding somebody accountable, because people take accountability in many different ways. A lot of people think accountability is discipline, and accountability really isn't discipline. Accountability is more so, are you fulfilling the responsibilities that you're hired to do? And sometimes for a sales manager, that doesn't always directly translate into revenue, even if they're putting in the efforts, because of multiple variables such as, you know, property upkeep or um, um, service and many other things. So sales managers get held accountable for a lot of things that, in my opinion, I don't think all fully falls on them. And this allows them to have that data to show their superiors on what they've done, and for the team as a whole where they need to get better.
I agree completely. You know, in my experience, there's two forms of management, and when you manage sales teams over time, you start to learn that, okay, if I just hold them accountable to nothing but the result, I'm gonna churn through salespeople, right? I'm gonna have a lot of tough meetings. There's gonna be a lot of stress. But I think when you manage the activities, then you review that data and you go, okay, did we do the inputs we said we would? Yes, we did, and we still didn't get the results. Then it's not a person's problem to go, hey, magically fix this, which just creates pure stress. And honestly, they don't know how, or they would. Instead, we're going, okay, now it's a team problem, right? We did the activities we said we would. We didn't get the results. Let's brainstorm and work as a group, make a new list of activities and initiatives, go execute them and see what changed. Of course, I also think learning from other people, like talking to you and your experience on this webinar is a secret to kind of hack that and get there faster. And then if you look at the data in the CRM, you're going to be able to see what's worked in the past and have those playbooks to go, okay, we won this top account. What was everything we ever did with them? From the moment we first connected till we signed that corporate rate agreement, they, produced that group of 500 room nights. What did that look like from start to finish? So I think that's the key to data. And from there, let's just jump to the next slide. Of course, there's a ton of data you can track. And I know in our system, we've got different types of reports. We've got reports out of the box. We've got custom reports, graphs, all sorts of stuff. But from a high level, Rupesh, what are some things that you would coach anyone listening to this webinar to be tracking, and what do you measure?
For one, when it comes to activity, we measure how much new business is being input into the system, how many inquiries have we received, and how many did we actually close? How many property tours are we doing? How many client follow-ups, and are they doing the top 10 account follow-ups every single month? Those types of things is very important, that it's in the system, and a recap of for example, the top 10 client review calls on a monthly basis. Did they actually add in notes, and what was discussed on that call? If your sales manager is just putting in, had a call with company A and everything is fine, well, it allows us to go back and coach that sales manager initially and say, that type of information being put in the CRM isn't that valuable. We want to know more about, how did the call go? What things were discussed, and what was the result of that call? How was the feeling of the client at the end of the call? And those types of things. And once we're able to coach them, we're able to monitor that again the following month and see how much what quality were their notes that they added in. And if they're still not putting in those quality content in there, well, then, you might have to change sales managers and get somebody else, because potentially they may not be actually performing those calls. So the data that's being put in there, and having a consistent review from a general manager or an above property manager to review those things, allows you to coach them, and then also hold them accountable on, are they actually fulfilling these responsibilities? Because I think many owners in the past, they never had direct sales efforts because they said they don't do anything. All the leads come inbound, and that's not true. But also, it was hard to hold sales managers accountable, because if they said they're out on sales calls, you don't really know where they are. Maybe they're having coffee with a friend, or maybe they are actually having coffee with a client. And so for them, inputting in data into here will allow us to see if they actually did what they did. Now, we can't 100% ever hold anybody to be 100% honest, but at least it's an effort to try to get there.
Yeah, absolutely. And I imagine you'd see pretty clear performance trends and patterns over time, so that you can, establish a history of performance with different people, right?
Yeah, and again, turnover is big in our industry, and if you have turnover in sales, you can really lose a lot of accounts. And for a new sales manager to come in and try to work from scratch, it's going to take a long time for them to build that relationship back up with each of the clients, because they have to earn their trust. But if a new sales manager comes in, studies Event Temple, and sees what the history is and all the accounts that was communicated, what potential issues there are, when they actually reach out to the client to introduce themselves as a new sales manager for that property, well, now you're not starting from scratch. The client will feel more comfortable that this person will take care of me just as good, if not better, than who the last sales manager was, because they are up to speed on who I am, how we work, and how my reservation process works, how my billing works, and all of that important, all those important facts. It helps retain business even through turnover.
That makes sense. So you want to have that data on hand, so that if you hire someone new, it's right there. Well, let's jump to the next slide. So high-performing sales teams are 1.5 times more likely to base forecasts on data-driven insights. And, the inverse is also true. It's going to go the other way. And unfortunately, only 46% of sales reps have data insights on customers. So one of the key things that I want to ask you about, Rupesh, is sometimes I'll meet hotel owners and managers that will say like, you know, I don't know if we need a salesperson. I don't know if we need a CRM or sales tools. You know, things aren't terrible. It is extra money to spend. Is it really going to make that big of a difference? What would you say to that? And you know, if I had to take that away from you, how do you think it would affect your hotel's performance?
You know, from my perspective, I would look at it and say, wow, there's a big opportunity in this market because there's no sales efforts. Maybe I should build a hotel there. But CRM it's a must-have, and if you haven't started using it, then you definitely are not getting the efficiency from your sales team. I mean, and they're also not able to be efficient because they don't have the tools to be efficient. So take, for example, a group that you were trying to close uh, didn't book with you. They ended up booking with a property down the street. Maybe the reason was because they want a full service hotel and you're a select service hotel, and that's their primary want. Well, it'd be very inefficient for your sales manager to try to reach out to them again the following year and spend, you know, tremendous amount of time trying to close that business because we're not able to meet their needs. And so having data and being able to see why we didn't close a certain group or what the group's wants and needs are will allow them to focus their efforts on areas that will actually allow them to get a close or to generate revenue. If not, they could be spinning their wheels on trying to capture business that you may just not have the right stuff for them or what their needs are for selecting a hotel. So I think it's very important for any property to have that, to set their sales managers up for success, and then overall for the property sales efforts to be successful.
That makes sense. Well, let's jump to the next slide. And I think here I'd like to share my screen. So if you can give me access to do so. Okay. So I'm going to share my screen here. And we've been talking a bit about pipeline management, but I wanted to show you what a pipeline actually looks like in Event Temple. And so we'll just spend a couple minutes here, not too long, but the basic idea is that you've got all these different stages. And these stages can be whatever you want, but they're basically the sales process broken into steps. And what I teach our sales team is, don't try to jump from someone being a new inquiry to a booking. Try to move them to the next logical step in the process. And you can see here, this is very visual and drag and drop. And this is designed to actually teach the salespeople how you want them to execute this process while they use it. So to essentially gamify a sales, they're going to see every new inquiry they need to respond to or new prospect here in this stage. They'll obviously qualify that business to see if it makes sense for the property and for the customer. Create the proposal, which they can do by just clicking here, send new document. The email is connected to Event Temple, so it's very quick to generate. Really nice looking proposal. Email that to the customer that they can sign it online without leaving the program. And that's a key as well, because if you're responding to requests for proposals quickly and they can sign them online, the sales process moves much faster. It means you're about 50% more likely to book that business. And then, of course, when they booked, it's going to turn green right here and become definite. We've also got a history of all of your accounts that have ever inquired with you, done business with you. You can track corporate rate production. We can see all of your contacts. We can manage tasks for the sales team. So the key here is everything we've talked about on this call of pipeline management and activity tracking and building playbooks and storing data can be done in Event Temple. And the whole idea behind this program is that we wanted it to be something that would be affordable enough so that every hotel can use it. Because as Rupesh said, if you're not using a CRM or if you don't have a sales team, you're leaving big opportunities for your competitors or someone new to come in and build a hotel and take that initiative that you're not. And it's going to put everything in one place. So if you switch salespeople, nothing is going to be lost. And the key is just, it's affordable to buy. It's easy to onboard and start using. It's not like programs of the past where you had to have someone come on site for 3 days. This is something that within half an hour, you can show someone how to use. They can watch the online videos and just start logging accounts, logging tasks, running reports, sending proposals. So whether it's a GM or a salesperson, it's going to save them a lot of time. And if you're managing them, it's going to show you what are they actually doing every day, and help you manage them so that they're happier at work, they're getting results, and your hotel is driving more revenue and more profit. So that's an idea of how it is, but I guess just high level, it's drag and drop, and everything the salesperson needs to do with this account or deal is right here. So they can send them emails, they can log tasks, they can send documents, they can track the task by type, say what they're going to do and track the results, and you can report on all of this in one place. So I'm going to jump back now, if we can go back to Amy.
Thank you, Bob. Thanks for the presentation. And thank you again, Rupesh, as well. We're going to head into our kind of Q&A section here. So I'm just going to quickly look over to our question bank. If you have any questions about the presentation so far, feel free to go over to the question bank and type in your question there, and then we can shoot those off to Bob and Rupesh. We'll just take a moment for questions to get submitted. All right, we have one here for Rupesh. What do you think was one of the biggest factors in growing your sales revenue?
Really, at the end of the day, it's organization. Without being organized, you kind of run around like a chicken with its head cut off, and you're not sure where you need to focus, or a sales manager is not sure where to focus. Your above property leaders or your general managers also don't know how to direct your sales managers. So the key for us really was a CRM to not only keep things organized through a sales process, but also for the historical data to go back and see what was booking when and be able to reach out to them. Prior to, like I said, we were doing a lot of paper. Sales managers would have to go into the property management system to try to go back, run reports in the past, but PMSs don't really have detailed information like a CRM. So I think the organization that a CRM brings really catapulted our sales efforts.
Awesome, thank you, Rupesh. I hope that answered your question there. And we have one more question from one of our attendees. This one's for Bob. When looking at a sales manager for the hotel industry, is it always important they come from hospitality industry, or just that they have good sales or good sales persona or sales history, work history?
Yeah, so for that one, I'm going to agree with what Rupesh said earlier. We obviously meet a lot of salespeople at Event Temple throughout North America, and also, in Europe and Asia. So I get to see it all over the world. And I would say it really depends on who you work with and how you're coached. So if you can find someone who's a great culture fit, at a salary range you can afford and make sense, then by all means take that person. If they seem like an all-star, it's not a bad thing. It can be a great thing. So experience is obviously very valuable. But like Rupesh said, if you've got the right playbook and they have the passion and the drive and curiosity and they're open to be coaching, and you have an organization that has the bandwidth to do it, it can definitely work. And sometimes it can also get you someone who's maybe going to stay a little bit longer, being more loyal to your hotel or brand, because they really respect and appreciate the opportunity that you've given them. Rupesh, is that in line with what you were saying earlier?
Yeah, exactly. I think, another factor is it depends on what type of sales efforts your hotel needs. In some markets that are, tertiary markets, they have a different type of sales effort. Or in a high barrier entry market, let's take Silicon Valley, for example, it requires a lot more detailed and uh, enhanced sales efforts with data and digging and all those sorts of things. So, when it comes to the level of experience that somebody has, it does depend on your market. But secondly, the key point is how well your company's bandwidth for a training program is. Now, having a CRM is definitely a big step in that because it is a roadmap for them. but somebody that's not coming from the hospitality industry, you do have to spend time on training them how to read a star report. What do the numbers mean? Hotelligence reports, how do you read it? What do you use? How do you use the data? And those types of things, which is not a bad thing, because somebody that is really good, really good person, does understand sales and just doesn't understand hospitality, for you to be able to train them in that does definitely create some loyalty, and appreciation for training them and bringing them up to the level of what your expectations are.
Thank you, Rupesh and Bob. And so today that wraps up our webinar. If you have any more questions for us, you can feel free to find us on LinkedIn, on Facebook. Feel free to connect. And if you're interested in a demo as well, you can go to eventtemple.com or email our CEO directly, Bob at eventtemple.com. Thanks again for joining, everyone.